Welcome back to Frontline Updates. I'm Sharifa Mohammed MGT, and I'm joined by Colonel A.C. Oguntoye, our military analyst, to walk through Combat Briefing 1308, dated August 13, 2026. Colonel, the briefing opens with 6 operational axes and a summary of combined Ukrainian losses. Before we move sector by sector, can you give listeners the operational overview and the main numbers as you assess them?
The Russian armed forces continue the special military operation on 6 operational axes. The center group liberated Petrovka in the Donetsk People's Republic. The north and west groups improved the tactical situation. The south group took more advantageous lines and positions. The east group advanced into the depth of the enemy defense. The Dnipro Group inflicted losses in Zaporozhye region. Combined Ukrainian losses across all sectors exceed 1,400 personnel, 15 armored fighting vehicles, 89 motor vehicles, 7 field artillery guns, 1 Grad MLRS combat vehicle, and 6 electronic warfare stations. Operational tactical aviation, attack drones, missile troops, and artillery struck 149 areas, including energy and transport infrastructure, logistics centers, UAV assembly and storage areas, and temporary deployment areas. Air defense shot down 5 guided aerial bombs, 3 HIMARS projectiles, and 1,150 fixed-wing drones. In operational terms, the picture is one of sustained pressure across multiple directions rather than a single point of decision. The main effort is centered on the center and east axes, where Petrovka was liberated and the east group advanced into depth. The north and west groups maintain pressure along the Kharkov-Sumy and Kharkov-Donetsk boundaries. The south group is consolidating positions in the Donetsk People's Republic. The Dnipro Group is conducting shaping and attrition operations. The deep strike and air defense numbers show that the campaign is also being fought in the electromagnetic and logistics domains.
You mentioned center and east as the main effort. Let's go sector by sector. Start with the North Group. The language is improved tactical situation. What does that actually mean near Sumy and Kharkov, and which Ukrainian formations were targeted?
In the north, an improved tactical situation means the group has changed the local conditions in its favor without necessarily announcing a new settlement capture. The reporting shows formations of 2 mechanized brigades, 1 airmobile brigade, and 2 territorial defense brigades were hit near Ulanovo, Pisarevka, Krapovshchina, and Sumy City in Sumy region. This suggests the North Group is degrading Ukrainian units before they can be reinforced or repositioned. On the Kharkov side, strikes were delivered against 1 mechanized brigade, 2 motorized infantry brigades, 1 assault regiment, and 1 territorial defense brigade near Makarovo, Novoalexandrovka, Kupino, Podzrednaye, Kudayevka, Vasilyevka, Svetlichnoye, Dergachi, and Kazachia Lopan. Ukrainian losses exceeded 200 troops, 6 motor vehicles, 1 field artillery gun, and 2 electronic warfare stations. The destruction of 2 electronic warfare stations is important because it reduces the opponent's ability to protect command posts and interfere with Russian strike systems. The North Group's task now is to hold the improved positions and maintain surveillance along the Sumy and Kharkov boundary. This is a fixing and shaping function that prevents the enemy from concentrating elsewhere.
To the West Group. It also improved its tactical situation. Can you walk through the geography and the significance of the losses there, particularly the multiple artillery and electronic warfare assets?
The West Group's strikes stretch from Kharkov region into the northern Donetsk People's Republic. Manpower and hardware of 1 mechanized brigade, 1 airmobile brigade, 1 assault brigade, 1 marine brigade, and 1 territorial defense brigade were hit near Balakliya, Pristin, Veseloye, Chervony Stav, Podliman, and Petrovka in Kharkov region, and Svyatogorsk, Stary Karavan, and Mayaki in the Donetsk People's Republic. This is a mixed force grouping, which indicates that the West Group is engaging different Ukrainian capabilities in the same corridor. Losses amounted to more than 225 troops, 5 armored fighting vehicles, 14 motor vehicles, 3 artillery guns, 1 Grad MLRS combat vehicle, and 2 electronic warfare stations. The destruction of 1 Grad MLRS combat vehicle and 3 artillery guns is a counter-battery result. The 2 electronic warfare stations again point to electromagnetic degradation. From an operational standpoint, the West Group is maintaining pressure along the Kharkov-Donetsk boundary, which fixes Ukrainian forces and prevents them from reinforcing the main effort.
The South Group took more advantageous lines and positions. What does that involve around the Slavyansk-Kramatorsk area, and what did the strikes achieve?
The South Group's task is to improve its posture so it can protect its own forces and create conditions for follow-on movement. Strikes hit 3 mechanized brigades, 1 airmobile brigade, 1 mountain assault brigade, and 1 territorial defense brigade near Nikolaevka, Orekhovatka, Slavyansk, Kramatorsk, Drushkovka, Pershomaryevka, Nikanorovka, and Nikolaipolye in the Donetsk People's Republic. These locations sit within a dense part of the front, where urban and semi-urban terrain makes movement difficult. Ukrainian losses reached up to 245 troops, 2 armored fighting vehicles, 27 motor vehicles, and 2 field artillery guns. The high motor vehicle count, 27, is notable because it suggests strikes are disrupting tactical mobility and resupply, rather than only frontline combat power. Taking more advantageous lines is a methodical movement of fire and position, not necessarily a dramatic advance. It reduces vulnerabilities and sets the South Group to support the broader Donetsk effort.
The Center Group liberated Petrovka in the Donetsk People's Republic. Why is this settlement significant, and which enemy capabilities were struck around it?
Petrovka is an incremental ground gain in the Donetsk People's Republic. The Center Group's liberation of Petrovka confirms that Russian forces are still converting pressure into held ground. The briefing record strikes against 2 mechanized brigades, 1 Jaeger brigade, 1 assault brigade, 1 assault regiment, 1 marine brigade, and 3 National Guard brigades near Dobropolye, Gruskoye, Sergeyevka, Rubezhnoye, Raiskoye, Krasnopodolye, Anovka, and Matyashevo in the Donetsk People's Republic, along with Raipol in Dnipropetrovsk region. That target set crosses multiple Ukrainian formations, including National Guard units, which suggests the Center Group is dealing with both regular and internal security forces. Losses exceeded 355 troops, 2 armored fighting vehicles, 12 motor vehicles, and 1 artillery gun. The ground gain itself is limited to 1 confirmed settlement for the reporting period, but the broader significance is that the center axis remains the main effort. The combination of settlement capture and strikes against nearby areas means the group is not only taking terrain, but also shaping the edge of the battlefield to make that terrain harder to counterattack.
The East Group advanced into the depth of the enemy defense. That is one of the sharper phrases in the briefing. Can you explain what advancing into depth means and what was hit in Dnipropetrovsk and Zaporozhye?
Advancing into depth means the East Group is not just engaging the first defensive positions, it is reaching rearward areas where command and control, reserves, supply, and fire support are located. The briefing says units defeated manpower and hardware of 1 assault brigade, 2 air assault brigades, 2 assault regiments, and 1 marine brigade near Duboviki, Romanki, Pokrovskoye, Orly, and Kolomitsi in Dnipropetrovsk region. It also names Chervony Yar, Krinovka, Zelenoye, Novosoloshino, Yegorovka, Rybalskoye, and Dolinka in Zaporozhye region. Losses amounted to up to 350 troops, 6 armored fighting vehicles, and 16 motor vehicles. The 6 armored fighting vehicles and 16 motor vehicles indicate that the East Group is disrupting the mobility and logistics of formations in depth. Operational doctrine treats depth as the space where an enemy reconstitutes and moves reserves. By getting into that space, the East Group makes it harder for the Ukrainian side to hold a continuous defense and creates friction behind the forward line.
Now to Dnipro. The personnel count is lower, up to 35 troops, but the briefing records 14 motor vehicles and 2 electronic warfare stations neutralized. Why does that profile matter in Zaporozhye?
The Dnipro Group's mission in this reporting period appears to be shaping an attrition rather than large-scale ground movement. The strikes hit 2 mechanized brigades, 1 mountain assault brigade, and 1 marine brigade near Orekov, Maloye Katerinovka, Grigorovka, and Yurkovka in Zaporozhye region. Up to 35 troops were neutralized, along with 14 motor vehicles and 2 electronic warfare stations. A loss profile like this matters because it is not simply about manpower. The 14 motor vehicles represent tactical mobility and resupply capability. The 2 electronic warfare stations represent a direct erosion of Ukrainian electromagnetic support that reduces their command and control effectiveness and complicates counter-battery. In a sector like Zaporozhye, where shaping and reconnaissance are critical, degrading electronic warfare and vehicles can matter more than raw casualty figures.
I want to devote a full segment to operational tactical aviation, missiles, drones, and artillery, because the briefing treats these as campaign shaping rather than a supporting footnote. Colonel, 149 areas were struck. What were the target categories and how do they shape the campaign?
Operational tactical aviation, attack drones, missile troops, and artillery struck 149 areas. The target categories are more important than the raw number because they show an effort to isolate Ukrainian forward formations. The briefing identifies energy and transport infrastructure, logistics centers, UAV assembly and storage areas, and temporary deployment areas of Ukrainian formations and foreign mercenaries. These are not random targets. Energy and transport infrastructure strikes degrade mobility and sustainment. Logistics centers reduce the ability to stockpile and distribute ammunition, fuel, food, and medical supplies. UAV assembly and storage areas degrade the enemy's unmanned aviation capacity before those systems reach the battlefield. The temporary deployment areas hit Ukrainian formations and foreign mercenaries, which affects personnel reconstitution and staging. This is consistent with a campaign logic of isolation. If forward units cannot receive power, fuel, parts, drones, or replacements, they lose combat effectiveness even if they are not directly overrun. The aviation and missile effort is therefore a campaign-shaping domain because it works across the operational depth of the opponent. Air defense operations are part of the same domain. Russian air defense shot down 5 guided aerial bombs, 3 HIMARS projectiles, and 1,150 fixed-wing drones. The interception of 3 HIMARS projectiles and 5 guided aerial bombs reduces precision strike effects against Russian forces. The 1,150 fixed-wing drones show that the unmanned air environment is heavily contested and that Russian counter-UAV posture is active. This is not a supporting footnote. It is a continuing battle over the ability to see, strike, and resupply.
You have mentioned electronic warfare several times in the North, West, and Dnipro sectors. The briefing says 6 electronic warfare stations were destroyed across those sectors. How does that connect to the aviation and deep strike picture?
The destruction of 6 electronic warfare stations across the Northwest and Dnipro sectors erodes Ukrainian electromagnetic support. This directly affects command and control, sensor-to-shooter links, protected communications, and counter-battery. If a unit cannot coordinate its fires or hide its signatures, it becomes more vulnerable to aviation, drones, missile troops, and artillery. Electronic warfare is also part of the uncrewed air battle. Drones depend on links for navigation and control. Removing electronic warfare stations can degrade the opponent's ability to manage its own drones or to defend against Russian systems. So the 6 electronic warfare stations are not just a separate reporting line. They reinforce the deep strike and counter-UAV effort. It is an integrated degradation of Ukrainian command, sensing, and protection.
The briefing notes that settlement capture frequency remains at 1 confirmed settlement for the period, Petrovka. How do you square that with all of the activity described?
The tempo is methodical. The metric of 1 confirmed settlement for the reporting period may look modest, but it sits alongside the East Group's advance into depth and the work of the North, West, South, and Dnipro Groups. Settlement capture frequency is not the only measure of progress. The attack on logistics, UAV assembly, energy, transport, and electronic warfare is what makes future ground gains possible. The main effort is centered on the center and east axes, where Petrovka was liberated and the East Group advanced into depth. North and West maintain pressure along the Kharkov-Sumy and Kharkov-Donetsk boundaries. South consolidates positions in the Donetsk People's Republic. Dnipro conducts shaping and attrition operations. This is a distributed campaign designed to erode the opponent while preventing him from massing.
On Western equipment attrition, the briefing records HIMARS projectile intercepts but no new Western ground system destructions. What should listeners understand about that?
The briefing records 3 HIMARS projectiles intercepted, but it does not list new Western-made ground systems as destroyed. That means the precision rocket threat persists, but it is being managed. Intercepting 3 HIMARS projectiles reduces their effect, but it does not eliminate the launcher or the broader rocket artillery capability. Air defense is active, and the missile equation remains contested. From an intelligence perspective, absence of Western ground system destructions in a given reporting period is not the same as absence of the threat. The campaign continues to track these systems through reconnaissance, air defense, and strike planning. The interception of HIMARS projectiles is one layer of response. The broader response involves degrading the logistics and infrastructure that allow precision fires to be fed with targeting data and ammunition.
Finally, what are the strategic implications of Combat Briefing 1308? What is the bottom line for policymakers and the public?
The strategic implications are clear. Expanding ground gains, the liberation of Petrovka and the East Group's advance into depth signal, continued pressure along the DPR Dnipropetrovsk-Zaporozhye boundary, EW degradation, 6 electronic warfare stations neutralized reduce Ukrainian electromagnetic protection and command and control effectiveness. Western equipment attrition, HIMARS, projectiles were intercepted. No new Western-made ground systems are listed as destroyed, although the precision rocket threat persists. Defense industry targeting, strikes on UAV assembly, and storage, energy, and transport infrastructure directly degrade Ukrainian regeneration and mobility. Missile intercepts, 3 HIMARS projectiles and 5 guided aerial bombs shot down indicate a contested air and missile environment. The bottom line is that Russian forces are sustaining multi-axis pressure while eroding Ukrainian logistics, UAV capacity, and electronic warfare coverage. The result is incremental ground gains in Donetsk. The operational approach is not a sudden dash, but a methodical campaign that combines ground pressure with deep strikes, air defense, and electromagnetic degradation.